Hello everyone, welcome to this really awkward attempt at my first YouTube video, but also something that I really wanted to do for a long time. I just never had the courage to do it. So I'm Anna. I'm a bookworm, can't tell. I'm also really awkward and have ADHD. So if I get off on this, I apologize. And yes, this is a Keith Simpson mug for those who read Keeper of the Lost Cities, and if you haven't, I highly encourage you read it. Okay, anyways, I can't drink this yet, it's too hot. So 2024 is coming up. 2023 is coming to an end, and honestly 2023 was probably one of the best reading years that I've had in a really long time. I read 100 books this year. I'll probably list them either in the description or somewhere on the screen. But there were people who asked for video, people who asked for shorts, so I'll probably just recap what I'm talking about in the video, in the shorts. But this is hopefully a little more in-depth for those who really want the nitty-gritty. No spoilers, of course. But yeah, so let's get into it. So this year, I honestly didn't have that many 5-star books, which is good because I feel like a lot of times people rate like books 5 stars that just are not 5 stars, or they do use it too much to where 5-star doesn't really mean anything anymore. But I feel like 5-star books, like, you think about them for a really long time. So firstly, we're gonna discuss those. Then we're gonna discuss the books I didn't really like that were kind of overhyped, and then my most anticipated reads of 2024. And hopefully you can enjoy this and this will be of help to you, especially since I am a Christian, so I will be reviewing kind of based on that, but also not. So even if you're not a Christian, you can stick around and you're still gonna get probably what you need from this. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's get into it. Okay, the first 5-star book is actually a duology. Crap, it's in the middle. We're gonna ignore me turning around. But the We Hunt the Flame series. Oh, yeah! Okay, anyways. So this is We Hunt the Flame, which is the first book, and We Free the Stars. These books were like hyped up for a while, and then it kind of died down quickly. I wouldn't say like quickly, but like it was too fast for what these books deserve. And I mean, so these books is basically it's like a very high stakes romance, enemies to lovers, but think Aladdin. Does that make sense? So basically it's set in this world that's basically based on ancient Arabia, and it's about a girl named Zafira, however you pronounce that, I'm so sorry. So she is a hunter, disguised as a man, who goes and she hunts for her people in this forest called the Ars, which is like a magical forest or whatever, and she basically feels this call to it. You'll get into it. And then Prince Nasir, who is also known as the Prince of Death, is basically ends up being sent, I'm pretty sure, to assassinate her. I can't remember, it's been a really long time. Anyways, they go on this high stakes journey, and it's just, honestly, and the side characters are so lovable, and you just fall in love with them immediately. And then the sequel, like, for me, it's either the sequels are better or they're worse, but this, I feel like it was just equal measure. Like, this one, I feel like I loved more just because I was so in love with the characters already, and I already anticipated it. But as far as the level of books, like, I'm pretty sure this was her first novel, and it's absolutely insane. Like, I couldn't tell at all, but it is very young adult, so if you're looking for something more adult-ish, like, you can still enjoy it, of course, but it's not, it's just definitely not, like, it's made for, like, young adults. Yeah, that's why it's a young adult book. Anyways, enough ranting on that. And so if you know me at all, if you know me at all, which a lot of you probably won't. But if I had, like, if my writer self were to have an author crush, it would be Holly Black. Because everything she writes, Cruel Prince. Okay, I know. So I feel like Cruel Prince is either, like, I feel like it's either you love it or you hate it type of thing. But for me, I adored it. I really, there's definitely some things that people, like, think throws them off. But I'm like, dude, it's just so good. And for me, this was probably my first, like, high fantasy book that I've ever read that was just, like, straight up in the fairy world. Like, I've definitely read some, like, fairy tale based things and other good stuff like that. But this was definitely, like, the first one that was, like, pretty much purely fae. And I can't say the word, but the heroine is such a bad donkey, if you know what I mean. Like, if I could be a book character, this is the book character I want to be. And that's saying a lot because I've read so many books in my life. But, like, Jude and then Cardan, like, literally, it's enemies to lovers. And it's honestly so good. So it takes place, basically what it's about is Jude and her twin Taryn are human girls that end up basically being taken in to the fairy world to be raised by their older sister's biological father, who is a fairy. And basically they struggle because they're the outcasts, they're the misfits of the world. But then basically Jude has her own, like, I can't explain it without spoiling. It's just so good. But it's, like, it's high stakes. It is enemies to lovers, but there's so much lore. There's so much, like, politics. Like, the world is so, like, thick that it doesn't feel like you live for the romance, of course, but there's so much more to it than that. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of this entire series. Obviously, all the books are insanely good, and I love them so very much. But the ones I did 5-star out of the series, I know people love Wicked King. I actually do too. I don't know. Maybe I should have 5-starred that one. But the 2 I did was the first one and The Queen of Nothing, which is the 3rd one in the trilogy. I just loved it. And I know I said I was going to wait on doing the not 5-star books, but just while we're here on the Holly Black topic, we're going to talk about a really hyped book called The Stolen Heir. So this is actually, no, it's a sequel. Oh my god, don't say it was a prequel. About their little brother Oak. And yeah, I can't say much about this book because it'll spoil it. Anyways, I didn't really like it that much. I know a lot of people love it. And as a Holly Black fan, my writer crush is Holly Black. I don't know. I don't know what it was about this one. I don't know. It just did not hit the same. Maybe it's because it was new characters and it wasn't Cardan and Jude. But then I also read, like, yeah, and then the Tithe series, I know that came first, but I didn't really like that one either. Like, actually, I love Royben. Royben is really good. Okay, anyways, moving on. So a lot of Holly Black's books take place in the same world. But yeah, this one was really, like, hyped up and I was really excited for it. And it just didn't really live up to my expectation. It was good, don't get me wrong. But I just wasn't as attached to the characters or as invested nearly as much as I was in the Cruel Prince trilogy. But yeah, so there's that. Okay, back to 5 stars. We're gonna talk Leigh Bardugo because that is my other author crush. And literally everything Leigh Bardugo writes is just a masterpiece. She went, like, I know I don't want to, like, be like, oh, you have to have an education, you know, but she, like, went to Yale, so her writing is just, like, phenomenal. Like, when I say I've never encountered plots as complex as this before, like, she kept me on my toes for everything. This is also, yeah, this was another 6 of Crows. Don't know if you know about that. Crooked Kingdom. But literally, like, just reading these books, like, was like an insane experience. Like, you think you know what's going on, and then like the craziest twist you never expected comes up, and it's just like the way she weaves it all together so masterfully is beautiful. So Leigh Bardugo is also the one who wrote the Shadow and Bone series, which I also have, and I know that series gets a lot of hate, but I actually really liked it. I don't know that I would 5-star any of them. Maybe Ruin and Rising, which is the 3rd book. But yeah, so like the TV show on Netflix is actually combines Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows duology, so the show is actually not accurate, kind of in the slightest bit. Like, the characters are portrayed really well, especially the crows. The crows were casted so well. I respect the show, and I really liked it a lot, because I do understand that they were combining 2 different plots that took place in 2 different, like, time periods, but in the same world. So I do respect that. The, like, changes they made and everything to combine them. But if you're wanting to read it in the right order, and I'll add it to the screen, you're gonna read the Shadow and Bone trilogy first, just to get introduced to the world. Like, you can really read this first if you really wanted to, but honestly, like, I feel like if you read this first, then Shadow and Bone would be a disappointment. So I would, no offense to it, because I love those books, but I would read the Shadow and Bone trilogy first, get introduced to the world, because it is kind of complicated at first. You have to get used to it. And then I would go Six of Crows, which is about 6 pretty much misfits and con people who go on this heist. Yeah, it's a heist book, and it's really, really fun, and I didn't think I would enjoy something like that, but I did. And then Crooked Kingdom, also just so good. It ripped my heart out. And yeah, so there's that. And then King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. So yeah, it goes Shadow and Bone, Six of Crows duology, and then the King of Scars duology, which is sequeling, and it's about Prince Nikolai. I say Nikolai, guys. I really read it like that for forever. But honestly, this, other than Six of Crows, this was probably my favorite 2 books, especially this one. It was just really good. Like, a lot of people give this series hate, especially for some of the ships that will come up, that they just didn't think should happen. But honestly, once I read this, I did respect the choice that she made for who people should end up with. And again, there's romance in these books, but again, like, the plot is just so good. And honestly, there's nothing really about, I mean, there is, oh my gosh, there's romance. There's obviously romance. It is not the main plot point of the book, but it is a good plot point in the book. Anyways, moving on. Love Leigh Bardugo. Go read her. Cannot recommend her enough. Honestly, if I could, I would 6-star pretty much all of her books. Now we're going to head on to the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. Hello. This one is a fantasy romance, so if you're not looking for that, like, you can probably skip this part of the video. But I was really taken aback by this one. So I've read Caraval, but I actually did not read the rest of the series and went into this one. So if you're wanting to read Caraval, which is basically like a carnival romance game thing, with magic, I don't know how to explain that. But if you're wanting to read that series, I would recommend reading it first, because Once Upon a Broken Heart series is kind of like a sequel to it, and it does put in some pretty big spoilers for the other series. But if you don't care about that and you're not really planning on reading Caraval, you can read the series as like a standalone from that. It's just taking place in the same world, a different part of that world, but the same world, and has some of the same characters, so it does spoil some things. But yeah, so these books took me completely by surprise, because I'm not normally one for like romances like this, and I really thought it was overhyped, guys. I really did. And then I got there, and I was like, I'm in love with these characters, like, top to bottom. Like, I literally can't get over how in love with them I am. I unfortunately do not own the first 2 books, which is Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After, but I do own A Curse for True Love, which just came out this year. And as you can see, I clearly very much tabbed it, because I just love it. I love it so much. Jax and Evangeline are probably my favorite characters I've ever had on anything. And so yeah, basically it's about a girl named Evangeline Fox, and she basically needs a deal. So she goes to the Prince of Hearts, who is Jax, in this chapel to make a deal with him, and basically everything goes from there. And it takes place in the Magnificent North, and I think you would absolutely love it if that's your type of thing. There are some vampires in this book, but here's the thing. I'm not a vampire romance person. Like, Twilight, I can't do any of that. Like, for me, there is nothing attractive to me about someone sucking your blood. Just no. Just no. Anyways, but so there's a presence of them in this book, but it's just a presence of them. Like, it doesn't drive the story, and it's not about vampires. It just does have vampires in it. So that was like, because when I saw that start to appear, I was like, crap, is this going to be a deal breaker for me because I hate vampires? But no, it really wasn't, and I really didn't mind their presence all that much. I feel like they did kind of drive the story good. But yeah, it just feels like a very, like, it gets dark in some places, but it's like a very fairy tale-ish vibe, which I think is definitely what she was going for, especially with the world of the Magnificent North. I haven't drank this hot tea at all, actually. I don't know if it's too hot. Oh no, it's good. Okay, now we're gonna move on to one of my most unexpected 5-star books of this year, which this really is you either love it or you hate it book. But that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. When I tell you, this book tore my heart out. It was just so good. Like, I don't think I've ever read writing like this before. It was just so different from what I'm used to. It's like a mystery, summertime, like, thing. And I knew it would be a mystery, but, like, there is a huge plot twist in the book. Like, if you are a fan of plot twists, read this. Like, please don't spoil it for yourself. If you ever pick this book up, please don't spoil it for yourself, because it is that much more, like, effective. And this book literally made me sob. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, it made me sob. And I think, like, I hate rating books that are, like, super, like, that can be sad, like 5 stars, because I'm like, I don't want to be sad. But when a book just hits you that deep, when it produces that kind of emotion in you, like, you know the author's done a good job. And yeah, I really recommend this one. And then there's a prequel, which is Family of Liars. I could grab it, but I don't think I'm going to. Honestly, I didn't like that one as much, but here's the reason why. I read this while I was on vacation at the beach, and this is like the perfect definition of a beach read, and I didn't even know, like, what the big deal was about beach reads until I read this book at the beach, and I was like, okay, this is a beach read, and this is so good. And I didn't read Family of Liars at the beach. And I know that shouldn't affect things, but I wasn't really in the mood, and the end of this year is really just, like, amped my anxiety. I'm so sorry for my siblings in the background. Can they shut up? Sorry. Jesus loves me. I'm not gonna do that because that could be disrespectful. Yeah. But yeah, but like thinking back on it, remembering reading it, I'm like, no, wait, that actually was a really, really good story. You know what? I will read that 5-star. That was really good. Family of Liars is also really good. You should read that. They're better together, as the reviewers say. Yeah, but if you can read it at the beach, read it at the beach. It changes everything. And then we're gonna move on to, oh yeah, no. This is probably one of my favorite duologies of all time. Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. Oh, when I tell you. So this is also a fantasy romance. It is very young adult, very romance. Romance is probably the main plot. But there is a lot of politics, like, in a world that you can just get involved in. But I just absolutely, like, I fell in love. There were some things, like, looking back that I'm like, oh, it's kind of cheesy, but, like, ultimately, I don't think I've been this attached or giggling and kicking my feet as much as I have with these characters. As you can see, I also tab this a lot. But yeah, so it's basically about this warrior woman who is a part of the Ratan, which is the Queen's Guard. Her name is Kazi, and she basically goes on this mission with her friends and ends up coming across this prince named Jace Ballinger. Well, he's not really a prince per se. Point being, it's very much like a love story, but there actually is a series that takes place in this world that comes before these books. It's the Remnant Chronicles, and it's The Kiss of Deception, Heart of Betrayal, and Beauty of Darkness. I've only read Kiss of Deception, and honestly, that one didn't really hit me as much as these did. I liked it, but it wasn't like, it just didn't have the same effect on me as these. But these can be read as a standalone, which I did read them as. And honestly, I don't think that there's any necessarily important spoilers that are spoiled in these from the Remnant Chronicles, so I don't think it's necessary, like, really necessary at all that you read the other ones first. Okay. Let's look on this list, because there were some 5 stars that I did not own, unfortunately. Oh, okay, so, if you have not heard, Our Violent Delights, or These Violent Delights, and Our Violent Ends is a duology based in 1920s Shanghai between the gangs, and is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. If you were not one for violence, there is a reason why it's called These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends. Also, that doesn't sound as bad as it is, because, like, I know some people will, like, judge by title, and they're like, oh. And I'm like, no, it's actually from a quote from from Romeo and Juliet in Shakespeare that literally says, like, these violent delight, oh my gosh, I can't even talk. These violent delights have violent ends. So that's where the title came from, which I think is really cool. And she just did such a good job. I loved it. If you can't handle violence, don't read it. But if you can, please read it. Please read it. It's just so good. It wrecks you in more ways than one. And I do know, yeah, I'll talk about that later. Okay. This was one I did not expect, because I am not one for, like, cutesy little, like, fluffy young adult romance kind of things, or any stories like that. Like, The Summer I Turned Pretty, you want me to be freaking honest, it's overhyped. Honestly, I watch the series and get invested in the series, but honestly, I just get so annoyed, and I really, no offense to Jenny Han, but I'm just not one for her writing. Like, I just don't like it, personally, and that's just my opinion. Like, you are more than welcome. Obviously, she's popular for a reason. People like her, but just in my personal taste in books, I don't like it. Anyways, moving on. Not the point of this. I don't normally like fluffy things. But I love this one. I actually don't know what her name is. I'll have to look it up. But it's called Hope and Other Punchlines, and it's this really cute, like, kind of fluffy story, but also sad, about this girl named Hope, who basically became famous because a picture was taken of her during 9/11 when she was holding her birthday balloon as the tower collapsed behind her. And so basically her name was Hope, and so it went around like, baby Hope, like, this is Hope in the midst of all of this. But she also, like, had some issues of her own, and she just didn't want to be recognized anymore, or people to come up to her when they didn't know what she went through. And this guy, I'm pretty sure his name was Noah, came, and he just, like, tries to write an article about her. Anyways, it's really kind of heavy, but, like, really good book. I don't know why I loved it so much, but I really did. I read it during the summer, and it was just, I don't know, it just stuck with me, and I really liked it. But we will do some honorable mentions really quick. Actually, this was one that may be a 5 stars. Like, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be an honorable mention or a 5-star, and that is Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I'm pretty sure it's Veronica. We're gonna pretend it's Veronica. It is Veronica Roth. Okay, she's the one that wrote the She's the one that wrote the Divergent series, and I love her writing so much. Divergent series, honestly, I never thought I would read something of hers again after that one, because it ripped my heart out, and I had a bit of beef with her for a while, because nothing's ever wrecked me like those books did. Anyways, but this one is like a sci-fi story, and I'm okay with sci-fi. Like, I can read it, but I don't really get into it like some people do. But this one, I don't know why it hit so different, but it was just so good. Like, the main relationship, like, you could just see how they were dealing with each other's pain. And I really want to, it is a duology. There's the Fates Divide. But this one is, like, that Carve the Mark is just not talked about nearly enough. And I really think you should read it if you ever get your hands on it. It's just a really good, like, sci-fi kind of romance book. And it's just really good. And it really deals with, oh my gosh, pain and, like, just, like, getting over kind of, there are some trigger warnings probably for, like, abuse and stuff. I can't remember exactly what happens. But yeah, if you are sensitive about that stuff, I'm pretty sure there are quite a few things in there. But yeah, okay, last part of the video, most anticipated reads of 2024. There's definitely quite a few I'm really looking forward to. Some of the ones I already own is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, who wrote, the Inheritance Games. That was another one. The last book I read of 2020 this year is The Brothers Hawthorne, which is a sequel side story to the Inheritance Games trilogy. And I honestly, it's like a high stakes game thing. Like, there's romance in it, but I'm a big mystery fan, and this one is just like, honestly, if I could make up a genre for it, I would say it's escape room. That's how it feels to me, and I've never been more interested in ciphers and puzzles than I have been reading this series. And I'm like, now I want to learn that stuff and cybersecurity, and now I'm like, no, that's not gonna work out, but I still want to learn it anyways. So The Naturals, not like, I kind of know what it's about, kind of don't, but I'm really excited to read it. Anything Jennifer Lynn Barnes writes is absolutely amazing. And then Divine Rivals, I'm pretty excited for it. The sequel to that, I think it was called Ruthless Vows, just came out. I haven't read this yet, but it's good. Like, kind of, I'm pretty sure it's either gods or demigods kind of story. I don't remember exactly. I should probably look these things up. I could probably edit them in. So I'm really excited for that. The sequel to Powerless is coming out. I did like that book. I really did. This is literally no offense to her, because actually writing myself, I realize it is so difficult, but you could tell that it was her first novel, and you could tell why it was, like, popular on TikTok. It kind of felt in a way like a more advanced version of, like, fan fiction writing, but it was still pretty good. Like, I love the banter, the dialogue was fantastic, but for me it just wasn't a 5-star. But I will definitely read the sequel. I'm excited to see where it goes, but it's basically like a fantasy Hunger Games kind of vibe. Yeah, and I'm planning on finishing the Caraval trilogy. Also excited about that, but again, nothing's ever gonna top Once Upon a Broken Heart. And then If We Were Villains, I do own that, and I'm really excited to read that. It's basically like a Shakespearean mystery, not Shakespearean, but like it takes place in a drama club, which is a theater kid. That's gonna be really great for me. Let me look and see if their TBR is not completely developed. For those who don't know, it means to be read. It's not completely developed for this year, which is fun. That's the whole point, is getting to develop it, getting to finish it. But yeah, for 2024, I'm resetting the goal of 100 books. Honestly, I set it that way last year because I read pretty quickly. So I was like, oh, this is just something I can definitely meet and then maybe go over. But life gets busy, and so I almost actually didn't finish it. This is the last day of 2023 for me. Probably won't be for you by the time you see this. But yeah, so I'm really excited to develop TBR to go into this. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful. I really enjoyed this, actually, talking to you guys. So if you want to see more videos like this, hopefully that will come in the future. And I'll be making shorts to recap this for those who wanted it. And maybe I'll do a reorganizing bookshelf video. We'll find out. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, and Happy New Year.